Hello everyone, my name is Peter, I'm the Dungeon Doctor. Welcome to my second video on giving a breakdown of the new One D&D playtest rules. This is the first document that they've released so far, that Wizards of the Coast have released so far, entitled Character Origins. Most of this document is relating to how characters are going to be built going forward with D&D, but honestly, those rules aren't really the most contentious in this. I think overwhelmingly there's been a lot of support for those character building options where effectively all characters, no matter what race you are, get a free first level feat. That seems very popular. It kind of knocks Variant Human off its pedestal. The things that tend to be the most controversial in this tend to be relating to further down the document in the rules glossary with regards to some stuff that they're changing. This video is going to be about the new rules for inspiration, and as you've seen from the title of the video, I'm asking a question on have they kind of broken inspiration with the new rules that they're introducing. So sit back, grab yourself a cup of Earl Grey or something, and let's get into it. So, inspiration. There's been quite a bit of discussion on forums and Discords, Reddits, etc. about this. Some people love the new rule. They think it makes it much easier for DMs to award inspiration. But there's also a lot of people who are talking about how this rule is perhaps very easy to exploit. As for me, what camp do I fall in? I dislike the new rules for inspiration. I'm going to get into why later, but it's going to be a little bit... It will be a bit different from what you may be hearing from another few sources. So before we get into that, though, call to action. This is a very, very new channel. My last video did really well. It seems like people really want to hear my thoughts, or maybe anyone's thoughts on the new One D&D playtest rules. So thank you to everyone who subscribed and liked off the back of the last video. Here's just another call to please like the videos I put out, subscribe if you haven't already so you can get alerts to more videos like this. To people who will maybe subscribe before I did that video, don't worry, I'm still fully intending to do a lot of monk-based optimized builds, looking particularly at the weaker monk builds, weaker monk subclasses, I should say. But during the summer holidays, my son is away from school, so I'm more or less a full-time parent and full-time on my other job as well. So until he goes back to school, I think those videos are going to have to take a back seat, but I think September should be a lot more productive. All right, without further ado, let's look at what the new inspiration rules say. I've got them just on the... They're over this way, apparently. Got the rules just by here. I've got a copy up here, so let's read them. When you have inspiration, you expend it to give yourself advantage on a d20 test. You must decide to do so before rolling the die. Gaining inspiration. This is one of the more controversial bits. Now you gain inspiration when you roll a d20 test and get a natural 20. The other part to this is you can also be awarded inspiration by the DM when you do something particularly heroic or amusing. This was pretty much the case already, although it was more tied into bonds and flaws. Next part of the rule is only one at a time. You can never have more than one inspiration die at a time, but if you are awarded it, you can give that inspiration to someone else. I think that is a new rule, and that bit I'm okay with. Let's see. Losing inspiration. If you still have inspiration when you start a long rest, you lose that inspiration. I think that was also the case already. Not happy with it, but let's actually break down each of these bullet points. So, firstly, inspiration gives you advantage, and you must decide to do this before the roll. Nothing's changed here. I think that was always the rule that was stated in either the players. Yeah, it would have been the player's handbook. But this felt like a really good time to maybe formalize that people usually don't use inspiration this way. Here's how it usually plays out. Someone rolls a d20 and they get something poor. Then they realize, oh, they've got this resource that they aren't using, inspiration. Players always forget about it, and then the question will come up with the DM, can I re-roll that using my inspiration? Now, in theory, a DM should say, no, you've got to decide to use inspiration before you make the roll. However, I think like 90%, maybe 99% of DMs will say, yeah, absolutely, use it to re-roll, because that player's remembered that resource that they usually forget. They've had this disappointment of getting a low check, and this is like their last chance to actually succeed on that roll. It's usually quite dramatic, rolling that inspiration. Like they're usually using it when they really need to. And I think while it does make it a lot more powerful, I think it's probably just in his favor to roll with that interpretation, because that's what people tend to use it as at the moment. I will say that perhaps with the new system that they're introducing for inspiration, players are less likely to forget about inspiration in that way. So perhaps they will start using it for before roll to roll with advantage from now on. But I don't know. I think that kind of behavior is maybe a bit too embedded in people's minds at the moment. There is another fix of Wizards of the Coast, or Jeremy Crawford, feels that interpretation is too powerful, and that is to make it work a little bit more like bardic inspiration. I see lots of people talking about ways to use inspiration. I think it's people like Dungeon Coach, Ginny D, Dungeon Dudes, where you don't necessarily have to make it with advantage. You could make it be like a D4 roll or a D6 roll that you add to the result. That makes it less powerful than having just straight up a reroll, but makes it a bit more appropriate to rolling after you've seen the result. So ways to kind of change the balance on power, but I think having a player decide to use inspiration before the roll is just too tricky more than anything. All right, let's carry on. This is the big controversy. The main way to gain inspiration now is through rolling a natural 20. This is the biggest change to the rules, but before we get into all the complaints, let's see why it's perhaps a good thing. It means that players are getting inspiration more often, and it's becoming a more central mechanic of the game. Currently, inspiration does wildly vary between DMs. DMs sometimes remember it and they're keen to award it where appropriate, but I think more often than not, DMs forget to use it. And so introducing this rule where players do get it on a natural 20 means that they're continuously getting these D20s. It's feeling good that they got this resource that they are being awarded and have the opportunity to use. Now to get into every reason why this doesn't work. Okay. Firstly, why are you awarding this on a natural 20? The players already automatically succeeded on whatever check they were making. They feel good already. You don't need the inspiration on top of that to make them feel more good. And I think everyone has already said this, but let's just add it to the pile of critiques. Don't award it on a natural 20, award it on a natural 1. The only issue I can see with awarding it on a natural 1 is it's a little bit not great for halflings who have this bountiful luck trait that means that they get to reroll ones. Maybe just embed it into that trait that says that if they roll a natural 1, they do still get inspiration. Maybe when they roll a 1, they get inspiration even when they're getting the reroll. That way it keeps that not balanced, but make sure they still get the reward of inspiration. But the big part is that, if you're rolling on a natural 20, you get a natural 1, you feel bad, but oh wait, you've got this this spongy mechanic. This comes up in other games as well. So if there are any fans of Mario Kart here, you may know that particularly in later versions, when you are playing Mario Kart and you fall behind, in some versions, your maximum speed is increased, giving you a chance to catch up, or you're just awarded better power-ups and stuff. This is kind of like that better power-ups mechanic. If you're having a bad night, you're rolling natural ones quite often, you need that catch-up mechanic to make the game fun again sometimes. And I think D&D can be that way. Sometimes the D20 is a fickle and vengeful god that some days will roll ones consistently. This softens that blow, and if you're rolling with advantage or getting rerolls, those natural ones are going to come up less often. So it's nice. Whereas people who are already on a roll, getting inspiration as well, they don't need that inspiration. Right, next complaint. There are going to be some classes who get inspiration more often than others, and this is going to come down to how often they roll a d20. If you're going to compare a wizard to a fighter with 3 attacks and action surge, who's rolling the most d20s? It's going to be the fighter, who's rolling it turn after turn, getting 3, sometimes 6 d20 rolls a turn, whereas the wizard, they're getting a d20 roll when they're trying to make a saving throw or something, because normally they are just casting a spell and imposing the saving throw or d20 roll on the DM. Similarly, monks will get a bit better use of inspiration, barbarians, any martial classes, but particularly monks and fighters, they're going to get inspiration more often. And while those classes need something, I don't think the inspiration mechanic is the way to do it, because what you get into a situation of is that player keeps getting inspiration, whereas inspiration is meant to be this thing that's usually pretty evenly distributed between all of the players at the table, and it can make people feeling bad that they aren't getting this resource that other players are, even though there's nothing necessarily inherent in their class, like a class feature that says that they should get often. So yeah, love not great things there. Let's see, anything else on this? Right. The fact that inspiration still gives advantage. Now, the advantage-disadvantage system for D&D 5e is a great system. Simplifies all the modifiers and stuff that systems like Pathfinder or the earlier D&D 3.5 edition really got sort of bogged down with, where you could kind of stack modifier after modifier after modifier onto rolls that you're making, and it would slow down play. Advantage disadvantage takes that out and makes things much simpler. However, if you're able to get advantage from inspiration, it kind of disincentivizes other ways to get inspiration. Now, this can be through things that are already hardwired into the mechanics, like if you knock a creature prone and hit them with a melee attack within 5 foot of them, you get advantage. You might have features like the samurai's fighting spirit that give you advantage. You might have the help action that gives advantage, or a familiar, or any number of other things that are baked into the class features. So you do have these ways to get advantage that usually require a little bit of thought. If you have inspiration as a way of getting advantage, then I don't know, it feels like you're always going to have it. You don't necessarily have to make these clever plays or thoughtful decisions to get advantage. It kind of cheapens the experience on that if really you're just getting inspiration as a result of a die roll, be it a natural 1 or a natural 20. The other thing is the kind of more soft rules mechanics. When I'm playing in particularly roleplay or puzzle-solving situations, if a player is doing something creative, or they're taking the environment or the NPCs into consideration, they're really engaged with the game world and are making decisions in a thoughtful way, that is probably where I'm going to give them advantage on a check. Now, arguably, rather than give them advantage, I could give them inspiration that they can use when and if they want to. But I know that kind of detaches it from the specific situation they're using that clever play in. So really, again, if they have inspiration as something they can use, then maybe they aren't going to be thinking as hard on ways that they can encourage me to give them advantage on something where they've been clever. And that means there's less need to be engaged in the game. So, I don't know. Inspiration seems to be taking a lot from these other situations. And, that's another reason why it's good to maybe not make it advantage, but make it bardic inspiration. Make it different from advantage and disadvantage, so you are not kind of stepping on the toes of these other mechanics so much. Because it does get a bit busy with advantage, disadvantage, and there's no way of stacking it at the moment. Let's see. There's one more criticism, and I think people might be waiting for it. Particularly with getting natural 20s on skill checks, there are arguments that players can maybe make a series of pointless rolls, or maybe just engage in more skill checks in general because maybe they're risk-free or something, in an effort to gather inspiration before doing something difficult. I don't think this complaint is necessarily without merit, but I do see some people in the community taking it to the nth degree, where they're suggesting that maybe players are in bad faith, maybe doing something silly, like they want to make an attack roll against a wall or a tree until they get inspiration. Now, newer DMs will probably allow this kind of behavior to slide because maybe they don't know better and maybe aren't feeling comfortable with saying no to players. However, the problem isn't going to be there for most groups because most DMs are going to see what the players are doing and say, no, that's just not going to fly at my table. Here, have a swarm of kobolds start attacking you for being silly. Or maybe they are going to, just say, no, you can't make the checks or something like that. They aren't going to let it fly. The other thing is, though, if you do have players going to engage in this kind of play, they will go probably find other ways to exploit the system already. So while I agree the system is exploitable, I think those kind of players were found something else to exploit in the game anyway. So it's not necessarily a great complaint. It's not the reason why I'm too worried about it. Right. Let's see. So yeah, at 99% of tables, I don't think that's going to be an issue. The 1% of tables that do have it as an issue, they're going to see it, they're going to crack down on it and shut it down. It's not the thing that I think the community thinks it is. Let's look at the other changes, though. It suggests ways that the DM can award inspiration for players doing something heroic or amusing. Yep, that's more or less what it was already. But I don't like how it's being made secondary to the natural 20 rule. And actually, yeah, I think this might be one of my biggest bugbears with the system. D&D pun. It is that they're taking what used to be a very soft rule and making it very restrictive. And what I mean by that is they're taking a rule that did have quite a lot of DM interpretation to it and making it sort of have hard mechanics that are kind of put into the player's hands. And I don't think that's necessarily good for the game or good for DMs. At the moment, it's very much a tool in the DM's hands. They can use it for many different things. And that's what's good about a soft rule. It means that it's up to the DM how they use it. And yes, some DMs do forget to use it. But some DMs use it in a very clever way. They can use it to balance the game. Say the player's having a particularly bad night or having a rough encounter, or maybe they are newer players. That's a good situation to maybe be more liberal with awarding inspiration because it's adjusting the difficulty of the game in a small but manageable way. Or maybe you've got a group of very capable players and maybe they keep rolling really hot. That's when you maybe ease the brakes on it and don't award inspiration as much. Or at least just award it when it feels really appropriate to. So it takes this game balance tool out of players' hands. The other thing is, so before these inspiration rules came out, so many D&D content creators have suggested ways to use inspiration, and there's been a lot of creativity in that. It could be everything from giving specific examples of good roleplay to reward, or maybe having sort of homebrew mechanics on when you should award inspiration. I've got my own way that I use inspiration as well, and that is I will look at the module that I'm running or the particular adventure if it's a homebrew thing, and I will see what kind of behavior I want to encourage in players. So right now I've got a long-running campaign that's currently in Rime of the Frost Maiden. In that game, I reward inspiration for when characters are able to take a long rest in comfortable surroundings. This feels like it's rewarding players for not just kind of relying on tricks like the immense tiny hut for sheltering out in storms and the like. It's actually rewarding them for seeking out towns, comfortable lodgings, and getting a good warm rest and a good meal. And then it kind of drives home the fact that they're in a very cold and forbidding environment, and if they treat it as such, they are rewarded. If we were looking at other modules, like, say, Descent into Avernus, I might say that while they're in hell, they might receive inspiration for doing something immoral. Not necessarily a good fit for most campaigns. You don't really want to turn your players into a group of murder hobos, but in Descent into Avernus, maybe it's appropriate because the plane of lawful evil is actually, giving them a leg up for doing these terrible things. Or maybe Storm King's Thunder. I don't know much about that module, I admit. Or the Odyssey of Theros. Maybe, those moments where you're being heroic, like in battle, you're going up against a huge beast alone. That's a point where you might get inspiration, rewarding heroism more liberally, for example. So, yeah, I think for these reasons, it is better to try and keep inspiration as this soft rule, because the moment you make it have hard and fast rules in the player handbook, you take it away from DMs and they don't get as much use out of it. And really, I think if WOTC want inspiration to be a thing, they need to make better suggestions within the player's handbook or the DMG that they'll be releasing that says this is how DMs can reward it. We are keeping it in your hands with in mind that it's a game balance tool for you. So let's see the other rules. What about a rule where, the rule where a player can use inspiration to grant an... Oh, right. No, this was... okay, so this is the other rule. So there's the new rule where if you have inspiration already and you're awarded it, you can give it to another player. That's fine. I have no issue with that. I think it's maybe a shame that you can't stack inspiration, but I don't think players need other resource pools to manage between key or spells or sorcery points. Players have enough to manage. It's fine. But I think having other ways to use inspiration would be a good idea. I think Flute, bit of a tongue twister there. He is himself already suggesting ways that maybe inspiration can be embedded into certain classes on ways that it can be beneficial to them. So obvious ways might be you can spend inspiration to get a key point or a sorcery point, or maybe recover another feature, maybe get an extra die of damage on something, stuff that players might want instead of advantage or disadvantage. And I think that's good and fair. I think that maybe makes it a bit... I think that makes it a bit better, actually, than this constant thing where you're using it for advantage and disadvantage. They have other effects, so you're not getting into those issues where you're stepping on the toes of other mechanics. Let's see. often... I've got a list of notes here. Oh, right. So this is the other idea I had. So you've got this one other way that I would suggest using it. So on top of it, maybe benefiting certain class features, maybe let's take that idea of awarding inspiration to another player and go further with it. When you're in combat, if you've got inspiration and you see another player making a check, like a saving throw or an attack roll, maybe it's really important. Why not have one of the players who's not taking their turn use their reaction to throw that player inspiration? This has a couple of effects. Firstly, it makes sure that inspiration is getting used, because often it is getting forgotten. The other thing is that it gives those players something to do and watch out for when it's not their turn. I think that's one of the big issues with combat. The players who aren't having a turn will often become disengaged from the combat, so to speak. They'll maybe start checking their phone and stuff. But if you give them a resource that they can use at any time during a round of combat when it's not their turn, that keeps them interested. It keeps them watching the other player's performance and the other monster's performance, and gives them something that they can do while they're waiting. And I think that could be pretty good for the game too. So yeah, just lots of other ways that you can use inspiration. And that particular idea, I think that's a great way for other players to maybe rally around another player as well. Say that one player has been rolling natural ones all night and the other players are feeling really bad for them. I think letting them throw that player inspiration in those moments would be really helpful. Or maybe it's not even that they're having a bad night. Maybe that player is having a dramatic story moment. Maybe in-game they've got a nemesis that they're fighting. Won't those other players want to see that player succeed? They throw them inspiration to help them go that bit further. And it has this really nice feel to it. I think I might be getting this mechanic from... I think it's the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic RPG or something like that. There's definitely this kind of sense of being able to share a resource with other players in a sort of very friendship-orientated way. Take advice from all the best game systems that you can, I say. Let's see. I think, the one other thing to say is inspiration as presented as playtest document. I think I will have done a sort of pithy little thumbnail to go with this, saying Wizards of the Coast are trying to make inspiration a thing. It does feel a bit forced. Inspiration has up till now been this resource that many DMs forget, and often games just run perfectly fine without it. And Wizards of the Coast seem intent on making inspiration a thing, when it doesn't necessarily even need to be. And we see, for example, they've got characters like humans who are getting inspiration as a resource that they get on a long rest. I mean, yeah, that's nice, but maybe you don't need to make inspiration a thing. Just keep it as a soft mechanic for DMs to use if and how they want to. And then you don't need to fix the issue of inspiration and make it something that's integral to the game in this way that they seem to want it to be. It wasn't integral to the game already. So, why fix it? You could even remove it. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea to remove it, because then players used to 5e will be wondering, wait, where's my inspiration resource? They'll feel like something's been taken away from them. So maybe don't take it away, but just keep it a soft mechanic, and I think you'll be fine. Just give better advice for it. Right, this video has run long enough, so let's summarize. The new inspiration rules, there are good things in there. There's some good, interesting ideas. They give players new ways to earn inspiration and ways to spend it. That as a theme is fine, but their mistake is their approach. They are reinforcing natural 20s being good when they don't need to. If they want it to come back on a roll of some sort, make it happen on a natural one. And I think everyone will be much happier. They are also just generally taking this thing that used to be a soft rule and making it into a hard rule. I don't think that's necessarily good for the game. Just keep it as a tool for DMs to use and emphasize that. I think we'll be happy. You don't need to make inspiration a thing. All right. I think I've rambled on long enough. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Every one of those likes and subscribes and comments I get just fills me with joy, and I'm really happy to see each and every one of them. All right. Thanks. And until next time, happy gaming.